Hello, my beautiful friends. Hope you guys are doing good today. So, we're back with the Poker Mind expansion, episode number 9. And we're going to talk about the parallels of Zen and poker. So, a novice monk went to a Zen master and he said, "Master, what is the first principle?" And without pause, the master retorted, "To speak it would render it the second principle." Verily, the first principle defies articulation, and the essence of the utmost significance eludes verbal expression. So, any kind of attempt to capture it in words ultimately will distort its purity. Training sites like Run It Once, Upswing, and all the other future training sites, they grasp at secondary, not primary knowledge or understanding. They veil truths with falsehoods. And truths transcend the confines of language. Truth is to be played, and it is certainly to be experienced on the table in front of our computer. It's not an idea to be memorized. Words serve as very distant echoes of a true experience, but often it is very misleading with false assurances from the training sites because they offer a sort of semblance of understanding. And actually, they mostly lead people astray, especially people who grip on too tightly. Often, what we see is players trying to believe in a coach's words rather than learning to be critical thinkers for themselves. And it's a very tempting refuge, but it impedes the arduous journey of mind expansion, of truth, of shunyata. Now, training sites and their very institutionalized forms inadvertently obstruct the path to be able to master this very nuanced game of poker. There are a variety of different systems that try to synthesize the expanse of poker into sort of cause and effect frameworks, which simply put more smoke in front of the student's eyes. Because these sites basically cater to the human condition, the human desire for very easy answers, and they offer solace in these different dogmas. But actually, true understanding demands a very large sacrifice, a total annihilation of a priori knowledge. It's very similar to Jesus on the cross. Not in a religious way, but in a way that is very synonymous, because the crucifixion of borrowed facts out of the mouths of coaches without experiential evidence and the justification for knowing it, which simply comes in the form of a thought, must ultimately be seen as an illusion if we wish to be reborn. Now, to circumvent the vessel of transformation, most poker players often cling to beliefs in the form of, if you do X, then you get Y. If you raise preflop, then you must continuation bet. But these cheap substitutes are not mastery. Beliefs offer comfort, so you 3-bet air, you should always continuation bet the flop. But this has no sustenance, just like to the soul, it has none. If you watch children playing with imaginary toys, certainly they're very similar to the way that poker players believe in a realm of concepts and ideologies, but they're completely oblivious to the fact that true reality that surrounds them is unknowable. So questions become mere deviations and answers are extra illusions. They do not actually solve problems. Now, very often, to evade the crucible of transformation, we fashion these kind of different beliefs to alleviate our insecurities about what we think our opposition is doing to us. And these are absolutely cheap substitutes. These beliefs that we create, they can absolutely stagnate. No alteration in our pattern in the way that we play is demanded. Because poker, well, it's a very competitive game. The training sites make it out to be something where we can just memorize ideas and we can get better. But unfortunately, rote memorization does not actually increase our consciousness. Our consciousness is absolutely untouched by the training sites. And it makes the beliefs of other poker players a mere plaything because we are able to see them from a much higher level. Now, they may delude themselves with borrowed words about how to play from other people, but it offers no sustenance, and it's very, very important. I want to give the example of a beautiful child frolicking in a garden and conjuring up imaginary lions until suddenly one day he's actually faced with a genuine escape from the zoo. He will be paralyzed with fear because his childish body is not well equipped to cope with a lion. So the discomfort of these imaginary lions ultimately dissipate in the face of reality. And this is very analogous for how we compartmentalize information and create associations with a particular spot, which is based on information that we have gotten through training sites and coaches' words, but not our own experiential knowledge. So in the realm of poker, very similar to life, in fact, the exact same as life. There's a tendency to lean on accumulated knowledge when faced with critical decisions, just like in a river betting scenario. The problem is, in doing so, we risk losing touch with the essence of the moment itself. And it's akin to watching a training video where we draw upon the insights of others, but perhaps we miss the profound subtleties of the present that we could encounter. Timing tells, thinking about why our opponent is betting so fast, understanding the psychology of what he's trying to accomplish, not simply drawing from memories about the past. Now, true mastery beacons us to go beyond the surface and to transcend this mere aggregation of information. And really, instead, we need to immerse ourselves deeply into the unfolding dance with our opponent, because our opponent is not black or white. Our opponent is constantly shape-shifting. Our opponent is constantly trying to exploit us in the same way that we are trying to exploit our opponent. The higher level we get to, the more this will be the case. Poker is about being fully present in the moment and attuned to the rhythms of the game, and genuinely seeking to understand the nuances of our adversaries' intentions. Why are they doing what they're doing, not just what? Now, in this state of mindful awareness, we actually find that not only do we have a strategic clarity, but we also have a deeper connection to the game, a deeper understanding, and to ourselves. So we certainly have to embrace the river of uncertainty with open hearts and clear minds, because therein lies the true artistry of poker. Because there is no game that is deeper, that is more beautiful than poker itself. And we live in a time where not only are we able to play this game on the side for fun, but we are able to do it as a profession for a living. Now, such is the plight for those who want to play with their toy beliefs, concepts, such as philosophies. They create questions for the training sites, but not for the answers, because they don't have interest in answers. They're simply mere diversions. Each answer is essentially spawning more questions, and it is a perpetual cycle. It is a perpetual why, because they do not understand the framework of how to view poker. They do not understand the game. So truth is not a question. And understanding the game, mastery, is not a question. It is a journey. It is an existential quest. And inquiry demands courage. And it demands a gamble with one's own very life, with one's own very presuppositions as to how the game works, one's self-image. Belief, on the other hand, does not require very much bravery. It's actually a refuge for very timid people who are scared of making mistakes. Now, maybe when they were in school, they had some association that making a mistake was wrong. So they need to find the right way. Very important stuff to be able to make these connections. Now, to embrace truth means confronting the lion within and without. So there's no need for training sites. Now, we may want to use PioSolver to test our ideas, absolutely. But poker surrounds us and is ever present. And in fact, our intelligence, which is much deeper than poker, ultimately is the totality of existence. Existence is intelligent. So in the tapestry of existence, both in the serene realms of enlightenment and also the fiery crucible of poker, we have to find the whisper of totality echoing through every single moment. Now, life itself is a gamble, and a very daring plunge into the unknown requires a large amount of courage to question all that we hold dear and to confront the veils of certainty that shroud our perception. Now, just as a skilled player must be willing to, you could say, wager or risk or gamble with their chips, we certainly must be the seeker of truth, being willing to stake our very essence upon the altar of uncertainty. This is fundamental to going deeper. I believe that Zen has created a tremendous rebellion against all the dogmatic ways of thinking in the education system, in the society, within our culture, against all of the different types of systems of thought, different political ideologies, different religious ideas. So as far as I'm concerned, what I believe right now in 2024 is that Zen is going to be paving the path for the next generation of poker players to elevate their consciousness and remember the connection that they once had when they first started playing poker. Remember the love that this game once brought them. There's a very good philosopher who wrote a great deal on society and humanity, and I have learned a lot from him. His name is Bertrand Russell. And he was writing on the history of the world. He has a good book on the history of philosophy. And he was confronted with the idea that it is absolutely unjustified to divide society and history in the name of Jesus Christ. Now, I think it's important to remember what Zen is and where Zen comes from. It comes from Buddhism. The real division in history did not happen 2,000 years ago, 2,224 years ago, although it's a bit more, but we get the idea. This division in history is before Christ or after Christ. But actually, the real division happened 2,500 years ago with Gautama Siddhartha Buddha. So anything before or after Buddha is a much more realistic way to account for time. And Jesus is not even a comparison to Buddha. Completely different states of consciousness. Jesus was not even claiming full enlightenment. He was only claiming that he was the last prophet for the Jews. It's very important to understand that these people were very different, because the contribution that Jesus created for human consciousness has been nil. However, there has been a lot of violence and warfare in this beautiful, misunderstood man's name. But Gautama Buddha and his contribution to human consciousness is absolutely immense, and it's completely immeasurable. You cannot put it into a box. And the same methods that Mr. Siddhartha himself talked about 25 centuries ago are the same methods that we can use to expand our own mind for poker. These ancient, timeless methods and these great masters go far deeper than today's mental game coaches. Now, before and after Bertrand Russell has talked about this fact of how Jesus Christ divides history, no one else has really said very much about this. And Buddha 2,500 years ago really was the one that started a new humanity for human consciousness. And he predicted in 2,500 years that the world would need to create a new consciousness. And this new consciousness, according to him, means that we are living in a very fortunate time, especially with this tremendous crisis that we as poker players are going to face with artificial intelligence. If we don't actually start to think outside the box and not just memorize GTO strategies, we're going to be out of a job very soon. We have to be able to expand our minds if we're not going to be out of a job. And it's very important to understand that AI is taking everything over. I'm not going to go on about examples, but you can certainly look online and realize that AI is going to be far better than what we are going to be able to compete with online in simple ways. We're going to have to expand our mind and take it to the next level. Soon the poker industry will be forced to be playing on camera or going to a casino or only playing very low stakes. If you're fine with playing 50 and L for a living, absolutely, it doesn't matter too much. Maybe it affects you a little bit, but I imagine there will still be people playing for quite a while in these games. But if you're looking to play very high stakes and become a master of poker, which is what this channel is dedicated for, then I would like to say that mind expansion is the first place that we should start. Now, an ancient Zen master used to tell people, when people ask me about Zen, I like to tell them this story. And the story is, noticing that his father was growing old, the son of a burglar asked his father to teach him the trade so he could carry it on in the family business after his father had retired. The father agreed, and the night that they broke into the house together was a moment of true awe, because the son never believed that the father would actually help him learn the trade to help support the family, because the father always spoke about how bad it was. Now, opening a large chest, the father told his son to go in and pick it out of the closet and take out the clothing. As soon as the boy got inside it, his father locked the chest. And then he made a lot of noise so that the whole house was completely aroused. Inside of the burglar's home, inside of the home that is being burgled. And then the father ran away. Now the boy was locked inside the chest and he was very angry, he was terrified, he was puzzled as to what he was going to do to be able to get out. Now, a great idea flashed to him and he made a noise like a cat. Meow, meow, meow. Depends on what kind of cat. The old family told their maid, please take this candle downstairs and examine the chest and see if there's a cat. What is all the noise? And when the maid unlocked the chest, the boy jumped out. He blew out the candle. He pushed the woman down and he ran out as fast as he possibly could. Fortunately, the woman did not get too injured, but he did not want to get caught. The people ran after him, but they were not able to. Noticing a well by the side of the road, he grabbed a rock. It was quite dark, and he threw some rocks down the well. A big stone boom in the darkness. And then the pursuers went around the well and they said, wow, this guy must be drowning. He jumped into the well. What an idiot. He's fucking drowning. We'll get him in the morning. And they all went back home. They knew that the man had drowned. Now, when the boy got home, he was extremely angry with his father. And he tried to tell him what happened. But the father said, don't bother to tell me the details. You were here. So you have already learned the art of burglary. The art of burglary is expanding your mind. Same as poker, because poker is a zero-sum game. It means that anything that you get at all is always coming from somebody else. You don't get anything for free. And in fact, if you're not very good at the art, it means that someone will be taking from you. So when we start learning how to play poker, we often learn the game in fragments. We learn pre-flop strategy. We learn how to play certain flops with certain bet sizes. And the game starts to become very, very, very fragmented. But poker is a four-street game, and we can never think about a spot in a vacuum. And this is what is being missed by the entire poker community currently. Now, of course, they will understand when AI is intelligent enough to tell them, or creative thinkers that are aware that trying to find methods which create certainty are not actually giving them the highest EV strategy. And poker is a game which we play to try to make EV, not simply to alleviate our fear of someone countering us and us having a negative emotion as a result of this being associated with, say, not making money, not being able to pay for our food, etc. Actually, the creative mind is far beyond these kind of dreams. It's very, very important that when we are playing a hand of poker, we also make our decisions anticipating how our opponents will perceive it and adjust it in future hands, and how we would like to counter these future adjustments, and what we may need to look for in certain counters that they may play or they may already be playing. And then we need to plan ahead about how to readjust against this information and hide our strategy. Information hiding is absolutely fundamental to expanding our minds. Now, poker is one. Now, many situations, but poker is absolutely one. And it may be divided by the mind which likes to compartmentalize things and fragment them. The dualistic mind. Poker is just like a big tree, an ancient oak. The trunk is lone, but the tree divides into two main branches, two main divisions. From 1,001 purifications, branches will absolutely grow, but it is still coming from the same trunk. And poker, the totality of it, is just like the tree trunk. It is one, it is non-dual. But the poker mind, the way that it is educated, creates divisions absolutely everywhere. Where the tree divides into two, it becomes dual. It becomes very dialectical. You could say thesis and antithesis, or in poker, value bet bluff, yin, yang, Shiva, Shakti, aggressive, passive, God and devil, Christianity, Buddhism. But all the dualities in poker are basically the dualities of the mind. They are not just of poker. They are of the unexpanded mind. And below the duality is only oneness with this game. Now, if a poker player slips below it, or he has fallen into the trap of the training sites, it will be very, very difficult. Now, if he is underneath the duality, you will find one. You will call it God, you will call it nirvana, whatsoever you want to call it. Oneness, life, totality, the absolute. If you go higher through the duality, you will come to many millionfold worlds. Now, this is one of the most basic insights to be understood. The mind is not one. Hence, whatsoever you see through the mind becomes two. It is just like a white ray entering a prism. It is immediately divided into 7 different colors, and the rainbow is created. But before it entered the prism, it was one. Through the prism, it is divided, and the white color disappears into 7 colors of the rainbow. Poker is a rainbow, and the mind is a prism. And an unexpanded mind is a white ray It is infinite. It is one. It is beyond the comprehension. Now, modern researchers have come to a very, very significant fact. One of the most significant facts that we have learned about neuroscience or the mind this century. And it is that we do not have one mind, we have two minds. And our brain is divided into two hemispheres, the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere. The right hemisphere is joined with the left hand, and the left hemisphere is joined with the right hand. Crisscross wise, So the right hemisphere is very intuitive, illogical, irrational, poetic, platonic, imaginative, romantic, mythological, religious, and the left hemisphere is very, very, very logical, very rational, mathematical. You could say it was like Aristotle, very scientific. It was very calculating. These two hemispheres constantly are in conflict. The basic politics of the world is actually within us. So we've had 5,000 wars in 3,000 years. An absurd amount of killing. Man is just a machine made for killing, but it is because he has a conflict within his mind. It is not because the enemy is somewhere outside of him. But poker players understand this. Poker players have done a very good job at overcoming their own enemies. This is why they are able to win at such a difficult game with such a large rake deficit consistently. Now, some people in the world may not be aware, but most poker players are very aware of the fact that we function through duality. And the real thing has to be done somewhere between these two minds. It has to be understood that these are actually one. Now, there's a lot of research being done about meditation methods, which create more connections between both hemispheres. This is very important to understand that Zen is not based on belief. Zen is not an ordinary religion. Zen is very scientific. Zen is the science of observing the subject. Normal science is about making observations about the object. So the left hand is concerned with the right hemisphere, that is intuition, imagination, poetry, Zen. The left hand has been very much condemned by the society because the society is those of who are right-handed, because the right-handed means left hemisphere. Only 10% of children are born left-handed, but they are forced into a right-handed world. Children who are born left-handed are basically irrational, very intuitive, non-mathematical, non-Euclidean. They're very dangerous to the society because they function from a place of intuition. And the society forces them in every way to become right-handed. And it is not just a question of hands. It is a question of the inner voice. The left-handed child functions through the right hemisphere. The society does not want to allow this because this is very dangerous. This is how you get people like Jimi Hendrix. They want to stop people before they get too far because they do not like creativity. The moment that you realize that life is beautiful, you will never want to hurt another person. You will never want to kill another person. In the name of nationalism, in the name of protecting imaginary fake scenarios, you are now going to murder. The society will fall apart immediately. The new poker player of Zen with an expanded mind will be that of love and creativity, just as innocent as a child. The opponents will never be able to understand. They cannot understand because they are simply slaves of their emotions. When they lose a pot, they feel bad. When they win a pot, they feel good. But this has absolutely nothing to do with strategy, and this is absolutely irrational. They do not have the capacity to understand. But their ego will certainly make a model of the new poker player who expands his mind. And he will say that this expanded mind man is inferior, in fact, simply because they cannot understand the inconsistencies in their model. And it hurts their self-image, it hurts their ego. Being a slave of one's emotions is not the state of consciousness for someone who is looking to master poker. Now, it is suspected that in the beginning, the proportion must have been probably about 50-50 between left-handed children and right-handed. But the right-handed party is ruled for so long that this proportion has fallen just to about 10%. Even among people that are listening right now, many people will be left-handed, but you may not be aware of it. You may have been using your phone or your mouse with your right hand. You might be using your right hand to do all of your poker clicking. But when we were children, we were forced to do everything right-handed. Now, this is a trick in connecting the two hemispheres. And it's very important to understand the trick that society tries to play to break this. Now, once you become right-handed, your left hemisphere starts functioning in a very dominant way. So the left hemisphere starts functioning from a place of reason, certainty, logic. Now, the right hemisphere is far beyond reason. It's not functioning in a very one-dimensional mathematical way. It functions in flashes, it functions as intuition. It's very graceful, but it is absolutely irrational to the cause and effect framework with which the society currently uses. Now, I suspect that man will evolve if he does not kill himself or self-destruct through war. If he does stay around, then man will evolve to realize that things mutually arise, and then he will stop killing other people in the name of peace. But for right now, this one-dimensional logical cause and effect model can never go beyond and get to the next level in mastery of poker. And none of the great poker strategists have seen the game through any other lens other than things mutually arising and happening simultaneously as far as strategy. But the ordinary strategic mind, the ordinary strategist, thinks in terms of cause and effect. So he misses the forest for the trees. Strategy is not based on cause and effect models. The society tries to put things into boxes, but poker players cannot afford to be so blind. So we are at a turning point in history where if we don't learn how to make EV from first principle and understand how poker works fundamentally, not through belief, but we have to be very scientific, it will be very hard for us to continue to make a living. Now, agriculture changed everything. We no longer had to hunt and gather. In fact, we were able to create houses. We were able to create the first modern society. The Industrial Revolution changed things severely. And the advent of the internet has made us far more connected. But AI is something that is coming far faster than what we've been anticipating. And it's something that we don't have the capacity to understand. But the ego of man always models things in a way where it feels comfortable and it can know. It is imperative that we start to shift our brains from cause and effect logic model to being able to see things multidimensionally. Now, the left-handed is absolutely the minority, and it is the most oppressed minority in the world. Even more than the African Americans, even more than the Jews, even more than poor people. And you have to understand this division. And if you do, then you will understand many things. I want to talk a little bit about Marx and the bourgeoisie and proletariat. Now, the proletariat is always functioning through the right hemisphere of the brain. Poor people are much more intuitive. They go to very primitive schools. They're much more intuitive. The poorer the person is, the less intellectual they're going to be. And that may be the cause of him being poor. Because he is less intellectual, he cannot compete in the world of reason. He is less articulate. As far as language is concerned, as far as reason is concerned, calculation is concerned, he is almost a fool. Now I'm going to read a story to highlight this idea. Once in a vibrant forest, there existed a unique school where animals of all kinds gathered to learn. Each creature had its own set of skills and passions, and the school celebrated its diversity. One day, during a class on tree climbing, a wise old owl noticed a monkey struggling to keep up with the others. Instead of criticizing the monkey's lack of prowess in climbing, the owl encouraged him to explore his other talents. Next, a class on swimming, a fish named Finley expressed his frustration with his inability to keep pace with his classmates. Sensing Finley's distress, a compassionate turtle reminded him that swimming wasn't the only measure of success and encouraged him to discover his own unique abilities. As the school year progressed, the animals began to understand that true intelligence and success weren't about mastering every skill, but rather embracing their individual strengths and passions. The monkey discovered his talent for problem solving and innovation, while Finley found his joy in his ability to navigate very complex underwater mazes. Together, they showed their classmates the diversity that should be celebrated, and everyone should be encouraged to pursue their own path, free from rigid expectations and judgments. In the end, the forest school became a place where animals flourished, each embracing their own uniqueness and contributing to the vibrant tapestry of the life in the forest. During this episode of Mind Expansion, we have had many birds outside the window join us, and it's very beautiful to hear them sing, and I'm very grateful that they joined us. We should always encourage each other to go deeper into our talents and deeper into our understanding. But we are often called fools because we are very good at mathematics, but maybe we're not as good at poetry, or vice versa. But the brain has different strengths and weaknesses. And mind expansion is about making this multi-dimensional mind become unfragmented. It becomes one. The rich person is often functioning through the left hemisphere of the brain. So he's going to be much more calculating, arithmetical, in everything, cunning, clever, logical planning. That may be the reason why he is doing very well as far as his richness and not having to be a slave to society. Now, the proletariat and the bourgeoisie cannot disappear through communist revolutions. No, because the communist revolution is the same kind of people. Now, just to say what the bourgeoisie is, it refers to the capitalist class who owns the means of production. You could say like factories, land, machineries in a capitalist society. So they are characterized by their ownership of capital and the ability to derive profit from the labor of others. The bourgeoisie typically includes wealthy business owners, investors, and individuals who hold significant economic power and influence. Now, the proletariat refers to the working class who do not own the means of production and must sell their labor power to the bourgeoisie in order to earn the wage. Now, they are the individuals who work in factories, farms, offices, poker players, and other sectors of the economy, often performing manual or low-skilled labor. The proletariat relies on their own labor to earn a living and sustain themselves and their families. Now, the Marxist model, the theory, the relationship between the bourgeoisie and the proletariat is characterized by the exploitation. There's the bourgeoisie profit from the surplus value generated by the labor of the proletariat. Now, this dynamic is seen as central to the perpetuation of capitalism and the class struggle between the capitalist class, the bourgeoisie, and the working class, the proletariat. Communism failed absolutely dismally, and it was disgusting. The Tsar ruled Russia. He ruled it through the left hemisphere of his mind. Then he was replaced by Lenin, who again was the same type of man. And Lenin was replaced by Stalin, who was even more of the same type. So this idea that there was a revolution and another revolution, it's absolutely an illusion. It's false, because deep down these are the same type of people ruling. The ruler and the ruled remain the same. The ruled are the right-sided hemisphere, so whatsoever you do in the outside world makes no difference really, because it is very, very superficial. It is about your own creativity, what's going on between your ears, inside of your mind. Nikola Tesla did not do so much in the outside world. All of his inventions came from within his mind. He was not just working at a cashier and clicking buttons, the same buttons over and over again. He was creativity. The great men throughout history that have expanded their mind have gone within themselves. The same applies for all the people who, rather than using their own critical thinking skills to solve problems for poker, fall into the trap of going to training sites because they are so uncomfortable with the fact that there is nothing that can be said about how to play poker. Poker is an infinite game, and it is so scary to the part of the left hemisphere man who wants certainty, who wants to put things into boxes, that he must conform and he must find people that sell him certainty. So he's willing to spend his money and, more importantly, spend his time to make himself more comfortable, rather than just understanding that certainty and comfort, you can only be comfortable when you realize that certainty is an illusion in your mind. Anything can happen at any time. And this is where, when we think about things in fragments, it hinders our ability to think outside the box, because we think that these presuppositions that we believe in are real. These training sites absolutely fail people because they don't give people the tools to think critically. And in fact, the customers do not have the capacity to differentiate between who is a good coach and who is not. So the poor people that are coming into poker that are new will not even know who is being honest, because we are taught to follow the crowd. I want to speak about Zen. Zen has laid the groundwork for centuries for mind expansion. And now poker players have the ability to take advantage of this fact. Now, the same ideas about brain and duality applies to men and women as well. Women are right hemisphere people. Men are left hemisphere people. Men have ruled women for centuries. Now, a few women are revolting, but amazingly, these are the same type of women. In fact, they are much more like men than traditional men. They're much more argumentative, much more angry, much more domineering. You could say much more Aristotelian. It's very possible, just like the communist revolution succeeded not only in Russia but China as well, that maybe in America women will succeed and overthrow men. It certainly seems to be the pattern. But by the time women probably do that, I mean, they will no longer really be women. By that time, they'll have become much more left hemisphered. Because to fight, one has to be very calculative. One has to be very willing to fight with men. So they have to be like men. They have to be very aggressive. There was a Zen master, I cannot quite remember his name. I believe it was Suzuki, but there were many Zen masters named Suzuki. He said, in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities, but in the expert's mind, there are only a few. This quote is very important to understand. The Zen concept of the beginner's mind, because it encourages us to approach poker, to approach the poker table with an openness, a curiosity, and a lack of preconceptions as to what we should do. And this flexibility is very similar to the way that Bruce Lee said, be like water. It is no different. These two methods are simply fingers pointing at one thing. They're a finger pointing at the moon. The finger is not the thing. Now, fighting with anybody is absolutely dangerous because we have to become like our enemy. And that is one of the greatest problems in human history. That once we fight with somebody, by and by, we have to use the same techniques and the same way. And the enemy might be defeated, but by the time that they have been defeated, we have also become our own enemy. And this is often because the people that we fight have not expanded their minds, and they have not seen the contradictory logic and all these simultaneous contradictory ideas and presuppositions that they hold. Now, Stalin was much more Tsar-like than any other Tsar, but he wanted to overthrow the Tsar. He was much more cruel and much more violent. And it always has to be like this, because to overthrow a Tsar, you have to be very violent. You have to be more violent than the violent Tsar himself. It's the only way to become a revolutionary. And it's the only way that you will become on top. And by the time that they reach there, they have become the Tsar themselves, the same people that they were trying to overthrow. And the society continues in the same way. Just very superficial things change, but deep down the same conflict always remains. It always remains because the conflict is within the mind of the individual perceiver. It does not exist outside of the mind. Now, as poker players, we understand that the world may blow themselves up. I'm not saying become a social justice warrior at all. I'm, in fact, saying meditate and think about your own mind. And be willing to look after yourself and love yourself and give yourself attention so you can expand it. I don't want more people to fall prey to the society. We as poker players have been working very hard for a very long time against the rake deficit in and of itself, but we have much bigger problems with AI. The only way that we are able to overcome these conflicts is by expanding our minds. Now, it's very likely that the society will end up self-destructing and people will be out of jobs, but poker is something that the wealthy will always play. And it's important that we elevate ourselves above the mid-stakes and the low-stakes mentalities of memorization. If we don't, there are going to be very big problems in the future when the AI starts to take over and we're forced into casinos. The recreational player does not need poker, but the professional needs poker to survive. And when AI takes over, there are going to be far too few recreational players and far too many pros. It will be a very difficult situation because even the recreational players who are making money right now, many of them will lose their jobs. And it will be more of the upper middle class and higher class that even have this capacity to play. So if we want to go beyond in this time, it is very important that we start planning now. Unless the mind is expanded, it cannot be resolved anywhere else. The politics are always within us. It is between the two parts of our mind, the left and the right. A very small bridge exists, and if that bridge is broken through some accident, through some psychological defect or something else, the person becomes very split. The person becomes two people. And the phenomena of schizophrenia or split personality disorder happens when the bridge is broken. And the bridge is very fragile. And the bridge, then we become fragmented and we behave like two people. In the morning we wake up, we're very lovely, very beautiful, things are okay, we won yesterday. Today we're down 10 buy-ins and then we feel very angry. We don't understand why we're feeling bad, we feel like we've done something wrong. This is the irrational dreaming mind that needs to be expanded so it can understand that this irrational slavery of emotions has absolutely nothing to do with strategy. The people that are slaves of their emotions will ultimately have to quit poker and get a normal job because the way that AI is going to take over. But if we strengthen this bridge through meditation, through other methods of mind expansion, it becomes a true crystallization. And this is what Gautama Buddha spoke about when he used to call the crystallization of the mind becoming one. And you could say that these two minds becoming one is the meeting of Shiva and Shakti, the male and female energies, yin and yang, the meeting of the left and the right hemispheres, the meeting of logic and illogic, the meeting of Plato and Aristotle. So if you can understand this basic idea that all life comes out of the same trunk of the tree, then you can understand all the conflict arises within the mind. And there's a lot to talk about. Now, this has been about 50 minutes. I love you all so much. Thank you so much for joining me. And we will continue to do these episodes, and we will continue to talk about methodologies to expand the mind. Speak with you soon. Mwah.